There's nothing more nerve-wracking than going into your first ever powerlifting competition with no idea what's going on and what to expect. If it's not your first ever competition coming up, this video might give you some tips and insights to help make your future competitions more chill and enjoyable. Let's get started. Back in 2018, I did my first ever powerlifting competition. Only had 2 years worth of lifting experience, but a fellow powerlifter who trained at my gym helped me prep for it. And also I had a lot of support and made some new friends at the competition itself. The powerlifter who I met at my gym, she didn't go to my comp, but I just walked in and hoped for the best. I did sign up, of course, but we'll get into that in a minute. It was a bit of a disaster though. Firstly, I didn't make weight. I should have went for the under 63 kilo weight category, but I decided that I'll cut a bit of weight and go for the under 57 weight category. I cut a bit too much and I still didn't make it, but I still competed as a guest. And then all my squats went quite well. I got all of them, even though my last attempt was only 100 kilos, which should have been okay-ish, but that was an absolute grinder. But yeah, I got them all. And then bench press happened, and yeah, I missed the commands on my opener, but I went up 5 kilos. I hadn't paused properly in the gym leading up to the competition because I wasn't really familiar with it all, and I failed that one. And then I couldn't move, or you can't go down weight anyway, and I couldn't go up weight because I didn't get the attempt and it was heavy. Yeah, I failed all 3 attempts on my bench press, which was a bit of a disaster. I got disqualified for that. I had the option to go home, but no, I wasn't leaving. I smashed my deadlifts, and yeah, I enjoyed the rest of the comp, but yeah, I learnt quite a lot from that. Since then, I've competed in quite a lot of competitions. I did do a few club ones to get my confidence back. This one was the Manchester Championships 2018, which was quite a big comp. In this video, we are going to go through what I've learned in the past and what I know to help you not make the mistakes I did and enjoy your competitions more. So here are some tips and tricks I've learned over the last 6 years of competing and 3 years of coaching powerlifting. How much weight do you need to lift to compete? Usually, as long as you can lift the 20 kilo barbell and 2 times 2.5 kilo weight clips you put on the end, so that's another 5 kilos, so 25 kilos altogether. That's all you need to lift. Your first ever competition will be a club comp or a local gym competition, so you don't really need a qualifying total unless you're looking for doing nationals and internationals, where you probably find what they call a sanction competition or qualifier or something to get that qualifying total, so you can put it in and you can meet that qualifying total. I know British Powerlifting have changed their qualifying procedures recently, which is a whole new subject in itself, but yeah, you don't really need to think about that right now. If you're looking for your first ever competition, either look for your local powerlifting federation, or you can check out any nearby clubs and lifting clubs and gyms. They might be able to hold some competitions on. Personally, I've lifted under the British Powerlifting, which is IPF rules, which is International Powerlifting Federation. And I've also lifted with the Amateur British Powerlifting Union. They run under the rules of the World Powerlifting Congress. I've only done 2 federations myself, but I've met people who've done different federations as well. So this video is basically my insight on what I know the rules are. The rules are slightly different in different federations, but this is my insight on this, and hopefully it can help you out. The IPF, or the International Powerlifting Federation, has classic with sleeves, but you don't need to wear sleeves if you don't want to. The minimum they require is an IPF approved belt. Your first ever comp, you probably don't need to look at IPF approved, but if you want to keep competing, I would just recommend buying yourself an IPF approved belt, which is on their list, or the federation's approved belt. If you look on your federation's website, they should have a PDF you can download or equipment list. IPF also has a full power and bench only for both classic and equipped lifters. And the amateur, or just the British Powerlifting Union, there's the Amateur British Powerlifting Union, which is a drug-tested version of the British Powerlifting Union. This federation, they have more categories, so basically they've got raw, naked, That sounds kind of funny. These just have a belt and nothing else apart from the singlet. And then you have the classic raw, which I've competed in myself, which you can wear belt, and also you've got either knee wraps or knee sleeves. I tend to use sleeves myself. I find wraps a bit awkward to play around with, especially in between my squat attempts. I'd rather not be thinking about playing around with wraps, but it's entirely up to you. And then they've got the equipped section, and they also have full power and then single lifts, so you can decide if to go into just squat or bench or deadlift, as I know anyway. I've not really done that before, but you tend to get charged per category you're in, so just be careful if you don't want to be spending too much money. Federations like the British Powerlifting Union tend to have a lower qualifying total, so if you want to go in and qualify either the end or the beginning of the year for the British Championships and the Powerlifting Games, and also the European Champions and the World Championships, they tend to have a lower qualifying total, so it gives more of a, I would say, realistic expectation, or the standard is seen as more reachable for newer lifters, or just people who just want to try and get into the international area of lifting. The British Powerlifting Union tend to have slightly different rules that I will cover a bit more if we go along through later, but IPF, their rules tend to be a normal rack set out. You go into squat, you can rack the bar, and you will get the squat command and then the rack command, which is the same as the British Powerlifting Union, of course. The British Powerlifting Union tend to use a monolift, which is basically a cage that you can basically lift the weight up without walking out, and they tend to use a hooks to unhook the bar, and you don't need to walk out. But if you've not used a monolift before and you competed in a competition with a monolift, tell them that you're doing the normal unracking and walking out, so you don't walk into the back spotter. Yeah, that's dangerous, please don't, because there's no point changing up what you already know in the gym, so just walk out like you normally do. It just looks a bit like a big cage or something. They have the same commands. When it comes to bench, competitions run by the IPF won't let you set up your bench press with your feet on the bench. People tend to do it. I need to do it myself to help get my lats into the bench a bit more before setting up. You can't do that anymore, and they tend to let you unrack or you get a lift off, and they tell you to bench and then pause on that bench chest, and then they tell you to press. Up it goes again, and then they tell you to rack. Federations like the British Powerlifting Union tend to let you set up your feet on the bench, and also when you unrack the bench, you can just bench whenever you want, and you just wait for the press command and the rack command, so it is a bit more chill in that department. Most federations are the same sort of commands for deadlifts. You just get a downwards command. British Powerlifting Union tend to have a back spot on the deadlift, or competitions run by the IPF rules, like British Powerlifting competitions or Northwest Powerlifting. They tend to not bother with it, they just let you lift. Next up we have prepping for this competition. So you need to prep your body to actually lift this heavy weight to the maximum capability of yourself and your nervous system. So I recommend doing a peaking program. So whatever you're training at the moment, especially if you don't have a coach and you don't know where to start, this bit's for you. You've basically prepped in the gym over the last off season, or you've basically done the work in the gym already. So the idea is to prep your body and central nervous system to perform on the platform. So whatever you're doing at the moment, I want you to use 12 weeks leading up to the competition to lower down your reps and increase the weight over time, but you're going to split it into different training cycles. I tend to do 4-week training blocks and then a deload, and then I'll reduce the numbers of reps and increase the weight each training cycle. I can do a more in-depth video in peaking for powerlifting in the future if anyone wants to hear about this. Last 2 weeks to your comp, you're going to train, but you're not going to max out the last week. So if you're training the RPE, which is a rate of perceived exertion, you got a thing of 1 to 10. 10 is usually at the absolute limit. I want you to train at 9, so you can get at least one more rep out to 95% of your 1 rep max. Don't quote me on this. Just make sure you're not like lifting to your max capacity at that week. Just make sure you're getting stronger, but you're not dying, okay? And then the week after, I want you to taper off. So you're going to basically do a deload week. If you don't know what a deload week is, you're going to cut, you can't really cut more volume because you kind of already reduced volume leading up to this anyway. Cut some of the weight and just train your movements. Some people take the entire week off. I tend to train lightish, probably around 60% of my ROM rec max, and then I have, let's say, 4 days before comp completely off, maybe with some mobility work and some stretching and stuff. Some lifters have been fine 2 days before the competition, but I tend to like to take 4, depends on how your body is feeling. Just make sure you get plenty of food in, plenty of sleep, chill out. I know you'd be so eager to lift, but leave that for the platform. Equipment needed. I did briefly cover this before with the minimum of a belt. I'll just go through this quickly. So for small competitions, you might not even need a singlet, but double check the rules, of course. Most of the feds, or all feds I know so far, usually expect a minimum of a weightlifting belt. Knee sleeves or wraps, depending on the category and federation. Yeah, so I think all federations do ask for deadlift socks as well, which I forgot to include. Just make sure that you don't scraping your knees on the deadlift. It's not very hygienic, it's kind of gross, and I don't think they'll let you lift either if you don't have your deadlift socks. So make sure you don't have to be actual deadlift socks, but you can get a pretty cheap pair on Strength Shop. I would actually link by equipment, especially approved equipment list in the link down below. But Strength Shop's pretty good for cheaper IPF approved or just most federations approved list anyway. I like to wear a pair of squat shoes. These tend to have a slight elevation of the ankle. This helps my depth a little bit. You can get some squat shoes that are pretty flat, or you can just wear a pair of Converse. Just make sure you're in quite clean pair of shoes. But there's more confirmation in, of course, a booklet of the rules of your federation, so please check that. Also, if you're doing or considering equipped lifting, is you will have a squat suit, wraps, and of course whatever footwear I mentioned before, and they also have a bench shirt and then deadlift suits. If you're completely starting out, please just consider equipped lifting, but not quite right now. See how you do raw at least. It's a completely different ball game, equipped lifting. I've only attempted equipped bench, which wasn't great, but anyway, it's just from my viewpoint. I've got plenty of associates who've enjoyed equipped powerlifting, so yeah, if you want to give that a try, at least try some classic powerlifting first and then go into a more equipped stuff later on down the line. Next up, we have practice your commands. This should be part of your prep, so like I mentioned before, check your rule book for your federation, but just to make sure in your squat you're going to unrack the bar, make sure your legs are fully locked out, and also your torso needs to be facing up with your chest up. If you're a low bar squatter who has quite a forward lean at the beginning of the squat, I recommend training to have a bit more facing forward and upright position, and then when they give this squat command, you can lean forward into your starting position for squat and then squat. The referee won't give the command and then you just look a bit stupid and sent off the platform. But for your first ever competition, they tend to have a bit of leeway for newer lifters and then advise you later on, which is really good. So you're going to practice squat, you're going to squat down, try and get below 90 degrees. As a referee myself, I look for your hips and bum going past the crease of your knee. Have a look in that for depth and then push yourself up. They tend to take the bar and help you rack pretty much straight away, but try and remain motionless at the top of the movement until it gives the command to rack the bar. And then bench press, like I mentioned before, IPF tend to give you the downwards command, which is usually a bench or down, and then you pause onto the chest. The ref won't tell you to give the push command, or press command anyway, until that bar is on your chest. And then it's usually a second, but some refs can be a little harsh, or the fact it is a long day, so they probably lost track of time. It is quite tiring being a referee, so they will give you the press command. Sometimes it can be a little longer than a second, but just wait for that command and then press up, and then wait for them to say rack. Do not move that bar behind you at all in that moment, otherwise it might red light you. But practice that. And then for deadlifts, Just wait for the ref to say down, and they tend to wave their arm as well, and that's it for command. Next up is cutting weight. I regret cutting weight for my first ever competition. After my first comp, I did sit in the under 63 kilo weight category for that federation for a bit, and then after the first lockdown I started competing in the under 57s. I did lose a lot of muscle and weight in that period of time, but I managed to put my strength back on quite easily, but I had a light body weight. But and then from 2021 till now in 24, I've been competing in the under 57 weight category. Cutting weight, you don't know what your body is capable of or what it feels like or anything. Even if you've done a bodybuilding show, it's a different ball game in itself. The idea is when you're cutting weight, you need to preserve that strength. So you say the average bodybuilders tend to drop loads of carbs and everything and rely on fat and proteins. From what I know from my fellow bodybuilding friends, it's not good for maintaining strength, especially for powerlifting, so you probably need a bit of a higher carb intake. I tend to prep my athletes like that, and myself. You're not experienced enough to be playing around with your body weight for this. I recommend just hopping on the scales at least once or twice a day, so morning and evening, and get an average of your body weight, and then look for like the weight category in your federation and try and sit in the middle of it at least. If you're like me, when I did my first ever comp, I was sitting at 58 kilos. Instead of dropping down to under 57s, I should have stayed in the under 63s. Just, you know what your body feels like, just going as you are, and then later on down the line, play around with seeing where you settle or cutting and stuff like that, okay? So as another thing for weight is, if you're way over still, you always can compete as a guest, so there's no worries in that. Weigh-in. Federations such as the British Powerlifting Union, they tend to do a 24-hour weigh-in. They do have an option as a 2-hour weigh-in, but that's mostly for qualifiers, but they usually do 24-hour weigh-in, and then by the time they get to the main championships, it's just 24-hour weigh-in only. So you come in the day before in a time slot, you can just go in, fill out the slip, and then give it to the person in the weight room, and then they ask you, strip off to your underwear, and you hop onto the scales, and then they weigh you there, and then they ask for your openers, which I'll get into in a minute, and then obviously put your clothes on and leave. And then you have that whole day to just eat plenty of food. Nothing that will hurt your tummy too much. You just get your carbs in and everything like that. So it is an advantage you have there doing a 24-hour weigh-in. And then federations such as the International Powerlifting Fed, their rules tend to be an only 2-hour weigh-in only. So basically you would just weigh in. If the lift offs are like 10 o'clock, they tend to start weigh-ins around 8 o'clock. And so it's pretty much the same. You're going to go in. To save time, you can just take your top off and your socks off, and then by the time you get into the weighing room, you can just take your pants and or shorts off and socks. Does it say socks? Never mind, strip off a little bit. They do shout at you from the doorway sometimes to get a bit of some of your clothes off first, but just take some of your clothes off just to save a bit of time for everyone. And I think people are usually a bit hungry because if it's a morning of the competition, some comp and bigger championship competitions have the afternoon group, of course, but if you they tend to be even more hungrier. So, but for your first comp, you shouldn't be worrying too much about making weight like that. So I can do a little bit of a breakfast, but everyone will be tired and hungry. So try and make it a bit faster. I'm not saying rush. And also, same sort of process as the British Powerlifting Union. You'll strip off to your underwear. I think you can get away with being naked, but I won't do that as a last resort, of course. If you're a woman, bra and knickers, man, just your boxers, of course. And we have female weighing you in. They're still a bit old-fashioned with that. A lot of us female lifters don't really care that much, but they tend to make sure women weigh people in. Comment down below if you've had anything different. It's usually not that awkward. I mean, I was a bit awkward at first. And I'm like, shall I strip off? And I'm like, yes, strip off, get on with it. It's not being awkward to see plenty of half-naked people all the time. It's fine. When you weigh in, you do the same thing as I mentioned before. You're going to get your weight, you're fine, and then you're going to give them your openers, which I'll get into in a minute. And then you can leave the room and then grab some food and chill out for a bit. After you've weighed in, you're keen to go and get some food, of course. But before you do that, make sure you do your squat rack height and also your bench rack height. They tend to keep announcing it's happening, so make sure you do that, and then get you some food and chill out, of course. So if you've got some time before you can warm up, I recommend leaving the building or finding somewhere like a foyer if it's a hotel to just chill in, out of the way of the competition, because it can take your energy away from you if you're hanging around too much and watching the competition. It's nice to get motivated, but it can be quite draining, so be aware of that. Going back to your opening selection part, make sure you start with your openers as lighter than you would do. They say usually open with something you can easily do 3 reps with. If your last attempt is 95 kilos, I recommend opening at like 75, 80 kilos, just to make sure. It might be really easy, but you want to get your form down to a T. And also, in case you're not feeling quite right and you're not used to the situation or what's going on, it's an entirely different rack and bar and everything and atmosphere. So even if it's really easy, just make sure you execute that lift so nicely. As a ref myself, you see a lifter do something slightly, like not quite hit depth. That's the depth one's a good one for this. If they're not hit depth, they tend to keep an eye on you for the next 2 attempts, so it becomes even more critical to hit depth. But I'd rather if they didn't, or we didn't have to keep an eye on you the entire time. So like if you get to heavier weights, you don't have to worry too much about the refs watching for your depth. I'm not saying don't hit your depth, I'm just saying things like that. So it has to be like a beautiful first attempt. And also, if the competition goes really badly wrong, you still got a good lift, at least on each of your attempts. So you don't like mess up like myself with my bench press attempt at my first ever comp. Yeah, that shouldn't have happened. When I failed at 50 kilos, it was pretty easy, but I shouldn't have moved weight. In my view, I tend to, if I fail or get at least 2 red lights, which is usually a no lift, just don't move weight at all unless it's really different circumstances. Just keep lifting that weight until you get that right lift. Sometimes I question even if it's a red light, but it depends on what the ref says it is. Also, after you've done your lifts, just make sure you ask the ref what you did wrong if you do get a red light or anything. That I'll mention that later on. It's a bit all over the place, this video. You've weighed in, you've basically done your rack heights and everything, and you've gone off to get some food. You're going to go look at, you usually got some screens at this competition in either a warm-up room or behind the platform or any area of the competition. They tend to have a list of people with the openers on, and you're going to check where you are on that list. If you've got a coach and handler with you, they tend to do that for you. But go and check where you are, so you've got a better idea, or your coach has a better idea of how you're going to warm up. I recommend going to warm up at least 20 minutes before lift off, unless you're like got huge jumps, you could say, huge amounts of weights. But it's usually worked quite well with 20 minutes or half an hour at the most. You could say half an hour, including your dynamic stretches and warming up routines, and then you're going to get onto the bar. It's a bit nerve-wracking entering the warm-up room for the first time, because you don't really know what to expect and there's like people everywhere and you don't know where to go. But look for a rack where people are similar height to yourself. Ask them if you can join in. They usually say yes. They rarely say no unless there's loads of people everywhere, but they're usually welcoming and friendly. So hop on with people similar height to yourself for your squat warm-ups at least, or similar ability to yourself, but you usually look at the height. I'm going to go and warm up. I tend to try not to change how you warmed up in the gym. So I tend to start with quite high reps, and then you can reduce your reps and you get to singles for the last like 4 sets leading up to your opener. But sometimes you can use a few minutes into the lift or your flight. Your flight is a set of people up to like 14, and you tend to go 14 people at a time, and then you got the next flight of people. So yeah, there's a brief explanation of that. It is also handy to check details to know what flight you're in, of course. I tend to have at least maybe so 3 flights, maybe, depending. I've seen before. So it all depends on what you're doing and what fed you're with, of course. After warming up, if your weight's not feeling quite right, you have at least 5 minutes to change your first attempt, or your opener, as we call it. Change that weight, or you can get a handler or a coach to change it for you. So don't creep out if everything doesn't feel right or anything. So your first attempt on squat is going to come up after you've warmed up for that. they're going to direct you behind the scenes or off the side of the stage, and they'll pull you out when you need to. So this is where you need to look at the screen of people on lifters. They usually say who's lifting and who's next as well in bigger letters, but you need to see where you're coming. And also, like, queue up when it's at least 3 people around leading up to you, and then you get chalked up. And if you've got someone with you to help chalk up your back, recommend that, that'll help. And then when you're called onto the platform, they usually have a referee near that area they call it the holding area, I think it is, behind or next to the platform. Holding area where all the lifters kind of queue up and get chalked up and stuff. So they usually have a referee around that area, and they'll stand there waiting for sure you're staying in the queue and check if you're the right person, of course. And then the volunteers and everything are going to load the weights and everything on for you, and then the ref will give the signal, or centre ref will give the signal, the bar is loaded, and then that ref in the holding area will direct you onto the platform. You've got a minute to do your lift, so take your time. There'll be 3 spotters unless you're lifting 180 or 200 kilo plus, and they have another 2 spotters. So you're going to have a centre spotter, which will be spotting behind you, and 1 at each side, of course. I've volunteered in the past as well, and the centre spotter tends to be the one in charge of the platform crew, so that's the best person to have behind you. You'll probably feel like it's a bit close to you while squatting, but you don't really notice or anything. They will stand behind you and they'll squat down with you. They tend to have either wrists or the support under your armpits as you go down, and the other spotters tend to like hold around the plate and bar and stuff, but they will squat down with you and make sure if you stop midway for too long, or if you start to fall back or go back down again, that it's a failed lift anyway, so they'll take the bar off you and help you rack up again. When you get onto the platform, you're going to get onto the bar nice and comfortable, unrack, step out if you want to. They're going to have 3 refs usually, and the one in the middle in front of you will be the one giving you the command. So I tend to set up, get comfortable, the bar on my back, and sometimes it feels heavy, but usually lying to you, so in my experience anyway. So set up nice and comfortable, knees locked out, chest up, breathing quite calmly and bracing my tummy. I'm going to look at the ref, and the centre ref will check everything's okay, and then he'll give you the squat command. Take a nice deep breath, and down you go, and then squat back up again, and then wait for the ref go rack, and then the spotters will help you rack the weight back up again, and that'll be your first attempt done. You can jump up weight a bit more after this, so you probably can go up another 2.5 to 5 kilos if you like. Just make sure, I think it's 30 seconds, isn't it? I think, don't quote me on this. You don't have long, of course, to go to the table, or your handler or coach can go to the table to give you a second attempt in. You can't go down weight, or you can either stay the same, go up 2.5, 5 or whatever. If you don't get to the attempt table in time, they tend to up you by 2.5 kilos just automatically. So if you intend to go more weight, or not at all, just make sure you get there in time. Yeah, after that, you're going to do your second attempt. It'll be the same sort of thing, but with more weight on the bar, hopefully. And then the third attempt, you can go a little bit mad if you like to. So it all depends on how your body feels and how the weight moves. It's also handy to have a handler. I mentioned handler, but you couldn't have a friend. Or I think I've seen a lifter have a mum just handle her that day. It's really cute, actually. As long as they can do the attempts and help you out behind the scenes, are all good. You don't need to be like a qualified coach or anything. If your coach can come with you and handle you that day, it'll be great, and they can help sort you out behind the scenes. Also, another pointer is, if you're failing squat, do not roll the bar off your back. I've seen that happen before. There's actually one comp actually, they kept rolling the bar off the back. It is so dangerous to do that. It's imagine, like the spotters are volunteers, even if they're being paid, it's just wrong that they have like how many kilos roll on them is so dangerous. So please do not roll the bar off the back. It just if if they've not grabbed the bar off you and you know you can't get it, at least go, no, or yeah, I tend to do that. And they've taken the bar off you, fine. Do not draw the bar, please. They tend to have the next, if you've got more than one flight at your competition, they will have those flights go through, so you've probably got another 5-10 minutes and then a 10-minute break. So you've got time to go, and I mostly recommend just munching on something like fast carbs or something, but if you've got a sandwich or something, that'd be quite nice. But make sure you're eating your sweeties and fast carbs to get some like carbohydrates in, and get some electrolytes in as well, and maybe a bit more caffeine if you like to. I try not to go overboard with the caffeine because you'll be like weeing yourself, in my experience anyway. Yeah, just make sure you get some carbs in and some electrolytes so you don't cramp up as much. And then if you're the first flight or something and there's like 2 more flights after you, for example, see if you can start to warm up around the break time you tend to have. But it all depends on how things move in throughout the day, of course. If you're not in the first flight, wait until your first flight warmed up and then you can go and warm up, of course, for bench press. The atmosphere is usually a lot better at this point and less heavy. Squats are over and done with. I'm not trying to diss squats or anything, but it tends to be quite intense and nerve-wracking. And then the atmosphere tends to chill out a little bit. So bench in a similar manner of your squats, and you're going to go into the holding area. Keep an eye on the list on the screens, the attempts and everything. And then you're going to go for bench press. The same thing. The bar is loaded. Let's go. Depending on the federation, make sure you're telling the centre spotter at least to, if you want to lift off, get them to lift off for you. If not, have a go at lifting off yourself. It's perfectly fine usually to not feel comfortable lifting off yourself until either last minute or to your second attempt. Can change that. Going to go in for your bench press. The commands, depending on the federation, is it's either on rack or just go for it, or if it's IPF, wait for your arms fully locked, deep breath in, and then they give you the bench or down command, touch that chest, and then they give the press. Up we go, lock those arms out, don't move the bar behind your head or anything, just keep it in front of your face, the starting position of course, and then wait for him to say rack, and then you start to rack. You're going to have them lift the bar back with you as well, of course, and that'll be your bench press done. After your bench press, it should be pretty chill, you see. After that, you're going to go have another break, get some food in. I try and get a bit more complex carbs as well as fast carbs in, and some more caffeine and electrolytes in. You start to feel a bit tired at this point, so just be aware of the fatigue and just mental tiredness as well. So make sure you chill out for a bit and then get warming up for deadlifts. You tend to warm up first, and then you can have the option of using talcum powder or baby powder to put on your quads to stop the bar from sticking to your legs. If you're finding a bit of a problem with that in the warm-up room, just make sure get a bit of it, but not in the warm-up room. Just make sure you can do it outside. People can easily slip on it and get it on the hands, and it completely ruins the lift if they've got talcum powder on the hands. They need chalk on the hands with grip, not talcum powder. So make sure you're following whatever rules they have as well for talc and baby powder. So yeah, you're going to warm up for deadlifts. You can get away with bigger jumps for this, for warm-ups and the attempts. I tend to, my first attempt is basically my last warm-up, which is a bit of a waste of attempt personally, but it works quite well. For deadlifts, you can go up 10 kilos, no problem, usually. Depends on your strategy. If you've got a coach and handler, or you've researched quite a bit yourself, you probably come up with a competition strategy, at least a little bit anyway. Further down the line, you tend to have a bit more of a plan, and also looking at the list of people and numbers on the screen I mentioned before. If you notice there's a bit of competitiveness of you going, oh, I can beat such a person, you can tweak your numbers a little bit, but try not to worry too much about that for your first competition. Depending on the federation, you get called into the platform. Some federations, like the British Powerlifting Union, they tend to have a back spotter for deadlifts, which is quite cool because when you're grinding out a deadlift, they're shouting down your ear, and it helps a lot actually. And I think they undo the belt for you after the attempt as well, and check if you're alright and stuff. Being too emotional and cry because of weed everywhere isn't really they didn't mind, I think, maybe. But IPF rules, they tend to have just an open platform, and they tend to have the spotters and loaders doing a thing, and you've got, yet again, like everything else, you got a minute to do the lift, especially for deadlift. That is loads of time. There's like, yeah, there's technical force to set up, but just to wander up, get height, and get to that bar. Yet again, the command is coming from the centre ref. The ref will be wait for your hips to lock out, and not always back, but you kind of locked out, squeeze that bum, you're standing straight up, with your chest up, looking at them of course, waiting for the command, and they tend to go down and then wave their arm, or some refs I've noticed they tend to wave their arm and say down. Just make sure you actually hear them say down, because sometimes I've missed commands that way in the past. So make sure they say down and they have the arm. The finale of the competition, not coming just from me because I'm a deadlift specialist, is because like everyone's more chilled out at this point, less nerves, but and a bit of a competitive side, because if you're like noticing people are close numbers to yourself, you might get a bit competitive and see if you can beat anyone. But at this point, yeah, you can go out. As long as you get your first attempt, you can totally go nuts on the deadlift, providing that you don't injure yourself, of course. And then, yeah, you can make bigger jumps or see how you feel. Just be careful, you'll be a bit fatigued from your squats and bench if you're doing a full power competition, of course, anyway. Yeah, that is, yeah, deadlifts. I love deadlifts at the end of comps. I tend to cramp up though. Quite embarrassing. After your comp, you've done all your deadlifts now, so you'll basically get time to sort yourself out, get changed, have a bit of a wash if you want to, get some more food in, because you'll be sore and crampy. Well, you shouldn't be too crampy, but you'll be sore and tired. They tend to tidy up a bit on the platform and everything, and then you have the award ceremony. Yeah, so get the opportunity to check the screen to see where you place and celebrate the achievements. Thank the volunteers and the referees and the federation. If it weren't for them, it won't be a competition. So thank your handlers and coaches for being there. I know you pay your coach, but yeah, I still thank them, of course. It's not because I'm a coach myself, I'm just, yeah, kind of like it. It makes you appreciative of the community you've just entered. After the award ceremony, you probably all get a participation medal in most cases. The British Powerlifting Union Championships, they tend to just have a certificate they give you at the beginning, and then just have bigger medals for first, second and third. Most comps I've done, the IPF, they tend to give at least a medal to the all lifters. If you competed as a guest, you might not. But it all depends. You do the award ceremony, say thank you, have a bit of a network together, get to know people, get Instagram handles, of course. It's quite motivating and inspiring to follow your fellow lifters and volunteers on Instagram and Facebook. Depends how old you are, and TikTok, Snapchat, if you still have Snapchat. After all that, you either go back to your hotel or go home, rest up, get plenty of food in, plenty of water in, and get plenty of sleep. Depending on the situation, there's times where I've done competitions I've just could not sleep that night because my body just cramped up. I think, was it the Manchester Open 23? I had a whale of a time. I don't think I lifted I still had like an extra attempt in me, and I won first. It was my first ever nationals I won, but I got loads of electrolytes in, but I still cramped up. But by the time I got to the hotel, I kind of gave up and just had my first rum and coke of the night, and yeah, and there you go. That probably wouldn't have helped, but yes, and never mind. But make sure you get plenty to eat, sleep and rest up for those times. The week after your comp is just going to be a recovery week, so make sure you're eating plenty still, and you're going to just do active recovery and mobility work and chill out, and then you can start to introduce like off-season programming or a turnaround program or something, whatever. If you've got a coach, they'll program you don't need to worry about that. But yeah, go back into whatever similar what you're doing before prep, but not too much volume because your body's still recovering, just trying to ease back into training. I hope this video has helped you conquer your fears and give you some reassurance and tips to do your first ever competition. And yeah, you'll still be nervous, it's natural, but I hope this has helped ease some of that worry and anxiety. Keep pushing yourselves and you'll smash that competition. Now go out there and lift like a champion. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe for more powerlifting, martial arts and other things, strength and conditioning stuff. Until next time, stay strong.